We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions.
Eagles! Swing of the miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup. The Flyers win the Stanley Cup for the lead. Yes!
Iverson, wow, what a fake off Daniels as he broke his ankles and got all the way to the cup.
Oh, well, good morning on this wonderful Father's Day morning. So happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. My dad, Eric, your dad, all the dads that fill the fatherly titles. Happy Father's Day to them. And we're in here talking all things Phillies. Good morning.
How we doing there, Don? Happy Father's Day to you. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're talking all things Phillies. We'll kind of back up to last weekend. Last weekend was a really cool experience having, the Phillies that play that London series against the Mets. Interesting. I didn't realize until I was watching the games that they were going to play one in the home role, one in the away role, which is different but unique. Really, really cool experience to see the way that this team can kind of be put on display, and not only the team, but it really felt like everything that you were getting through social media, having a lot of FOMO from last weekend, with everything that we saw coming out of London. It was really cool to see this fan base kind of be put on a positive light. Philly always gets the kind of the slight on the perception of the fan base. So seeing how the fan base was kind of really put on display, the highlights of the Passyunk Avenue, which is on the European to-do list at some point to try to get there. But let's go back to London. Let's talk about this team's display in London.
I mean, yeah, the whole spectacle was pretty cool. It was to try to grow the game, it's going to be a little bit, showy and everything like that. But I definitely had major FOMO not being over there. I knew so many people going over, and just wasn't in the cards. But overall, I think the play on the field was pretty good. I mean, the game they lost, they at least made it interesting. The game they won, though, it was good. I mean, they're playing an inferior team, but the whole point there is really to try to get people in Europe more into baseball. And it was a good series. Two rivals is always good. I know the year before they did the Cardinals and the Cubs, so doing a Phillies Mets rivalry game over there, or series over there, was really cool. But yeah, I mean, the play on the field was fine. I think we're starting to see the point where some of the injuries, and this, we can even go into the Red Sox and the current series too, are starting to catch up a little bit. It's nice getting Marsh back. And this is not, we can get to all these different parts later on too, but you can kind of see Sosa's getting a bit exposed now, maybe not an everyday player, but that's what they're grinding. So they're not losing a ton of ground. They're making it work. So it is what it is. But yeah, I was really impressed with the London series. It was fun to watch. It was kind of fun to have a game on at 10 a.m. That was kind of fun to experience.
I really liked it.
That. Yeah, that was fun.
I was kind of hesitant because there is a game coming up next Sunday, right?
Correct.
Next Sunday, that game against the Diamondbacks is an 11 a.m. start.
Yeah.
Because my son and I were thinking about going down, and I'm like, wait, that's not an afternoon game. That's like an early morning, like
11:35.
Stop at Wawa, get your breakfast sandwich kind of game.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at it going like I didn't I didn't mind it. It kind of felt a lot like the European NFL games, right?
Yeah, that's what I was
Those
thinking.
games are great. Like they start at 9:30, they finish about 12:30, right? Kind of leads you right into the end of that pregame before the 1 o'clock kickoffs. I loved it because I got the game. The game lasted until about one ish, and then you had the rest of the afternoon to just kind of hang out, which was nice. I enjoyed it. I loved to go back to Saturday. I love the idea that Bryce Harper shows up in the biggest moments all the time, on the biggest stages, right? When the game, when not a huge spot in the game, but his ability to be able to just produce in those big moments, right? And create that iconic celebration to understand the moment that you're in the soccer stadium, that you do the soccer celebration. But to not to the thing that I took away from that, right, was seeing the background of all those pictures. It looked like a home game. And this game was not only played like in like 5 time zones away in a separate on a separate continent. But like the captions that I saw were like, this game is for a game that is in the middle of the summer on a different continent. And the way that this fan base travels, and you heard it was like 10-1, that it was just the 10-1 Phillies fans, that like it was just a really cool, iconic way, right? The bat that he uses in that at bat with the Philly fanatic in the London Yard, with like, it's such a cool moment. And I'm speaking to the people that kind of see a lot of what he does as pandering. And the more and more that I see what he's doing, the more and more it feels genuine. It feels more like it's not just doing it to like endear himself, that like this is genuinely how he feels. This is genuinely how he is. This is just who he is. And someone who's extremely cerebral in those moments and just kind of understands the context of every moment and doesn't ever miss a moment to be able to capitalize on it.
Yeah, and that you brought up a good point there about the pandering thing. And he gave an interview at the end of last season, and I feel like it was one of the most genuine interviews I've ever seen from a player. And he even said, he's like, people say I'm pandering. He's like, I don't care. It is what it is. But I'm like, I'm not. Like, I fully love this city. I love this organization. I want to bring a championship here. I mean, he's fully immersed himself in the city, right? I mean, he took a 13-year deal here, and the whole purpose of doing it was because he wanted his family to grow up here. He didn't want to have to move again. So he's all hands on deck when it comes to doing everything Philly. So I think in the beginning, it came off as pandering, I would think, right? It's like, okay, like everything this guy's doing is, yeah. But I mean, I think it's genuine. I mean, I think he really does, love this stuff. And yeah, he does always come up in those moments. Today being Father's Day, he does always seem to hit a home run after he comes back from paternity leave. I don't know. It might be a good day to mash Bryce Homer on FanDuel or DraftKings or something. So you never know.
Listen, you're not wrong. And you're talking about a park that could, albeit what we're seeing from Santander in Baltimore, that it kind of lends itself to maybe being more up his alley to be able to pull one.
Yeah, going the other way, like impossible there. I didn't realize that they had moved the fences back and raised them too until the series started. I was seeing that Bryce was practicing during batting practice, trying to go the other way and clearing that fence. I didn't realize they did that. I mean, going to the left field is tough.
It does seem to be like, just watching these couple games, it seems that like those, if it's not in the gap, if you're trying to go right down the line, those balls just die. But it is, I feel like you could be onto something. I wonder what the odds are right now to get that. But like,
I'll be looking after we get off here.
For him to create those iconic moments, it's just such a cool thing to see. Talk about the way that so they come back, they play in Boston, and you see how they're, they do kind of struggle in Boston. It seems like the two teams that came back from London last year, they both kind of struggled kind of the same way. What did you see? Did you see anything in Boston that was concerning?
Not concerning now. I mean, every team's going to have these, and I mean, it's just the first season, and I can't tell you how long that I'm actually like not really all that angry with Philly's losses because it's like they've been on such a heater. I will say that the final game in Boston was frustrating. The pitching, just like not being able to find the zone, that type of stuff. I don't necessarily want to make excuses, though. I think other teams travel too. It is what it is. I mean, it's definitely a lot of miles. I think you'd be almost inhuman to not be sluggish after a series like that. Plus, then you get the days off. Your starting pitchers are on like a weird schedule now. So I get it. I mean, I wasn't necessarily surprised to see the struggling. And hopefully now we can kind of get back into a rhythm here with Wheeler on the mound today, and hopefully get him back into his normal rest pattern, so he's happy. I think even Nola, who sometimes talks about liking extra rest, I think that affected him because it had been so long since he pitched, and he got shelled the other night. It's really the first time we saw Christopher Sanchez and even Ranger too. I mean, he still went 6 2/3, but struggles a little bit with command. So I think there's definitely some things to it, but you can't make excuses. I think if anything, like I was kind of hinting at earlier on, I think the biggest thing is injuries, right? I mean, you look at the first the first 4 hitters or 5 hitters in our lineup, and you're like, okay, this is pretty good. And then the bottom, it's like, some of these guys have come through, but you're not going to like rely on them, right? I mean, Sosa has filled in admirably for Turner. Don't get me wrong, but he is a bench player, and
you're starting. You're starting to see the kind of shine wear off just a little bit. Where the more that people get a book on him, the more he gets exposed a little bit. That like he's good in his role.
Exactly.
In his role, he does phenomenally. But
and I'm not knocking him at all.
Not at all.
Right.
But when he's like a day-to-day guy, it just kind of it hits. He hits a little bit differently, right? And
yes.
When you see and I think it's the combination of the three, right? It's a combination of for that period of time, having Marsh out, having Turner out, having Real Muto out. Like those are 3 key guys. 2 of those guys are going to bat in the top half of your lineup. And then the guys that you're replacing them with, right? When you're replacing them with a Stubbs, a Sosa, and like, you look at what they're replacing them with, you're not going to get the fact that they were able to keep up on that pace without having those guys. One does say a little bit about some of the other guys that are stepping up a little bit, but to sustain that for a long period of time, right? We know the news is coming out, right? The idea that they're going to get Turner back probably maybe as soon as Monday. It is going to be obviously a welcome back to that lineup. JT is going to be out for probably, conservatively speaking, right? Probably the next 4 or 5-ish weeks. Talk about that injury in particular to start, in terms of like the prospectus of getting it done now versus waiting and then potentially having to get it done later in the season.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's huge. I mean, the timing, obviously you never want to see that happen to a guy, but JT is going to be fresh now, right? I mean, coming off, he's basically going to get a month off, probably more, right? He's a catcher. I mean, 4 weeks seems super optimistic to me for a catcher to be doing all that work behind the plate, with his knees and everything. So I'm probably thinking not until, after the All-Star break sometime, and that's fine. Like, you don't want to rush him back. But getting it done now, having him fresh for the stretch run in August, September, and hopefully into the playoffs is going to be good. But obviously, it hurts losing that bat because Marchand and Stubbs, okay, like they've actually been somewhat serviceable. But again, like the drop off is drastic, right? I mean,
right. You're talking about a guy who is probably the best or the second best catcher in baseball, and then 2 guys that don't even, they're backups for a reason.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is like Stubbs has looked pretty good defensively. I know for Marshawn, the thing is like his defense, everyone's kind of like a Rojas type situation, right? Where defensively he's been ready to be in the majors, but offensively the bat's just not there yet. Rojas, we might still have that same thing going on, but we'll see. But yeah, I mean, so again, as a backup to a backup, I mean, you got to see what he has, right? See what you have with the guy. I know the organization's been pretty high on him, so but losing JT is big because the way he handles the pitching staff, his defense behind the plate, just I think his leadership on the field, and obviously his bat, right? I mean, those are all major things you're missing from him right now. But this is kind of that part of the season where you're going to hopefully, get Turner back. We're starting to see hopefully some of these guys heat up a little bit. Like Casty's in a weird spot. I feel like there's times where I'm like, all right, he's finally coming out of it. And then he goes 0 for 5 or 0 for 4 or something like that. So I can't really,
but definitely has been better lately.
Better, right? Yeah. Not great, but better.
Not great, but definitely better than the beginning. If you're breaking the season up right now, considering, the games they've played in the last 20 to 30 games has been significantly better than the start of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And Schwarber's starting to heat up now. It looks like getting some of that power back. So that's good to see. It is. And it was actually, he had a slow start to it actually too, but he's been really good over the last couple of weeks. And I think he's actually hitting over, depending on if it went down last night or not. He was hitting over 250 entering last night's game, I know, which all the batting average lovers out there. Here we go. Here's our leadoff hitter. Just teasing. But him and then Bohm had that double the other night and he's been like getting his bat back will be huge because he was obviously what he was doing at the beginning of the year was unsustainable. He kind of went into that little funk, but hopefully he's it looks like he's kind of driving the ball into the gaps again, which is what you want to see from him. So we're seeing guys, step up in JT's place. And like I said, getting Turner back, they said probably by tomorrow we should have him back. So that'll be a nice jolt because he was hitting well prior to his injury. I think like people kind of forget that because of what Sosa was doing. But it'll be nice to have him fresh coming back into this lineup too. So that it should be a good jolt, and hopefully they can sustain that till the All-Star break and we get JT back.
Yeah, I think let's take a moment to pause. Right, you're talking about where you are at this point in the season, being where you are in relationship to the Braves. Braves are actually closer to the Mets than they are to the Phillies. And when you look at where this team is in relationship to the National League, right, we're still in a really good spot. Considering all the injuries that they've navigated. You got Marsh back in the lineup last night. You're going to get Turner back soon. I think that there is some kind of an inkling to maybe look into or investigate, the catcher position in terms of what you have. But I think the idea that's there right now is that like they'll have enough around that catching position to be able to kind of manage until he gets back. But I do think that that's something that they should investigate in the future in terms of what you have and the drop off from what JT is to the guy that potentially has to replace him. It's just something that I thought about, but like, I think, to go back to Boston for a little bit, the one thing that was concerning to me was when you looked at how Nola was pitching and the way that they were squaring up balls, it seemed like, the one inning, he had gave up like 5 consecutive hits. 4 of them were doubles. And I know he does kind of get snake bitten on it. There was one, and we've talked about the bad umpiring on many episodes before, but like there was one at bat where there's a third strike that's called a ball that extends the at bat, and then the next at bat is a hit that extends the inning, and then it extends the inning multiple players after that. It was the first time that you really kind of saw a little bit of flaw, and you mentioned that between him and Christopher Sanchez, what you saw in terms of their ability to be able to like not get through those spots. But it's a long season. It's a long season to maintain the level of stability that they had from the beginning of the season until now. And I think it's on the fan base to kind of recognize that and not take the Eagles goggles. You got to take the Eagles goggles off that like every game is not the make or break that it is during an Eagle season. That like you play 162 games, you're going to lose a significant portion of. You're going to lose probably. The best teams are going to lose probably at least a third of that schedule. So trying to navigate these scenarios and these situations to be able to get where you want to go, you're still really in a good spot at the end of the day. And this series, a lot of people are saying that the series that they're playing now, right, they're going to wrap up this series in Baltimore. The games in Baltimore have been incredible.
They really have been.
The pitching has been really, really good. What you got even yesterday, the start that you got from Taiwan Walker, the pitching that you're getting out of the bullpen, you get Matt Strom, who gives up his first earned run in a really, really long time. The way that you're able to see them fight and battle, even through the game, yesterday, where it kind of unravels at the end. But the games themselves, the last two games in Baltimore, have been really, really good games to watch.
They've been so much fun. That game Friday night might have been like the most fun game of the season.
It was.
That was awesome. But yeah, I mean, the thing is like you were saying, the team's in a really good spot. I dare say we're spoiled, because I don't think we've ever said Phillies fans are spoiled right now. But like the fact that we're getting like the stuff that we're finding to like nitpick about, right? I'm doing it too. I'm not just saying you and me. I'm saying Phillies fans in general, right? The stuff we're like finding to nitpick about would be like most things that teams would be like, okay, yeah, like our starters had a bad outing. Okay, it happens. Like, especially like Christopher Sanchez, right? I mean, the guy came in basically expected to be a number 4 starter, but has maintained a sub-3 ERA through this part of the season. Like, yeah, he's going to struggle sometimes. Sure. We know what Nola is, right? I mean, like Nola is going to be probably a middle 3 ERA pitcher by the end of the year, but he's going to eat innings. So like he's going to have these games sometimes. At this point, I would hope that Phillies fans know what to expect from him. But yeah, so it's like we're in a really good spot. And the rest of the league is struggling. I hate it that it's going this way. I wish it was just because they were just bad. But the Braves losing so many players right now, it's like it's fun to see them lose, but at the same time, it's like I wish they were losing just because like they stunk, not because they were losing. Acuna, and now I saw Harris just went down the other day. Strider obviously being out there. So we do have some separation there, and we're in a good spot. But this series has been fun. The Boston series I know is maybe I don't even necessarily want to say an outlier, but like teams are going to have clunkers, right? And it's just going to happen. Today's matchup is awesome. I cannot wait to watch this. Wheeler Burns. That's going to be a really fun pitching matchup, assuming both of them pitch to their potential. But yeah, I think today has potential to maybe be the best game of the series, and it's been a really good series so far.
So this was such a cool. So it's funny you mentioned this. So I saw this graphic to say, man, what a really cool way for it to absolutely line up on Father's Day, to have an iconic pitching matchup. To be able to see these two guys. And it's crazy to me to see the fact that like to understand the logic of why Baltimore, or not Baltimore, but how Baltimore was able to acquire a guy like Corbin Burns and add him to a rotation that's been, really, really stellar up until now. But these two guys, they kind of go back and forth. There's a couple of categories, in the games that they've started, and they both started 14 games, but like they're statistics are like 1-for-1. When you talk about WAR, you're talking about 2.4 for Wheeler and 2.0 for Burns. Like the innings pitched are like almost 1-for-1. It's a really, really cool pitching matchup for us to see on Father's Day.
Yeah, those numbers. I mean, so many of them are almost identical. I do like having the K rate in Wheeler's favor though, but yeah, it should be a really good pitching matchup. And yeah, it's funny how these teams are similar in some ways, right? I mean, you look. I think we have probably the best pitching staff we definitely have the best pitching staff right now, at least on paper anyway, in the National League. But you got to look like in the American League, you have the Mariners who have a really good staff but can't hit, but then you have the Orioles who have a really good staff and can hit. Like this is they're a really fun team to watch, and there's some parallels, but also like the way they were constructed is just so drastically different than the Phillies, right? Like Corbin Burns is one of the few guys who are big impact makers who weren't guys that came up through their system. Whereas like most of their lineup are all like homegrown guys, all real young and cheap. So like you got to imagine their payroll is probably not going to be what the Phillies is. So how long and how many of these guys are they going to keep willing to extend? Because right now you got to imagine that they're not going to extend everyone. And I think it's one of those things where appreciate what the Orioles are doing and how they build it up, because it's a really cool way to be able to have almost every guy in your farm system be an impact player.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at their lineup, right, you're getting production up and down their lineup. You talk about the youth and the inexpensive youth, and that compared to the talent level, right? Rutschman is a guy that you love to watch behind the plate. You're seeing a guy who is, again, wildly productive at the plate. You talk about Gunnar Henderson. You talk about
he is having a season.
It is really, really, really impressive to see it. A team that was kind of built a little bit differently, right? They were at the bottom of the American League for a while. They drafted in the top of the MLB draft for a while, but they also hit on a lot of these guys, and they're that's kudos to them, one, for identifying those guys, and then the player development to be able to get them to the major leagues as fast as they could in the most productive way that they could. It was just, and this is also something that people are talking about in terms of like, could this be a World Series matchup? I know this is the World Series that like we would love to see, obviously, because the Phillies are in it. There's something I saw. It's like the World Series that TV wants is the Dodgers Yankees, right? But the World Series that would probably be the better matchup would be the Phillies Orioles. Would be, but the Yankees are playing. The Yankees are smoking hot, and they're the Phillies were the first team to 40 wins. Yankees first team to 50 wins. I think you're seeing kind of that lull right after that hot start, and I think once you start to get these guys back, get you get your everyday starters back into your lineup, I think that only allows them to kind of go on another run. I think you're going to see, especially the more games that they play at home when the weather gets hot in July and August, it's only going to give the Phillies more opportunities to kind of stack some more wins together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see them play teams like this, though. You kind of want to see where you stack up against teams like this. And so far, I mean, this series has been a pretty even series so far. And kind of regardless of what obviously we want the series win, and that would, I think, show something. But, I think both these teams stack up against each other. I think, it would be interesting. Now, I know the Orioles played here last year, so that's why. But it's one of those things where we could definitely be seeing a World Series matchup here. It would be a really fun one to watch, too. Because, like I said, both these teams – now, it would inevitably happen where by the time we get to the World Series, I would hate the Orioles, and then I would hate them for the foreseeable future. But just like the Diamondbacks, who I didn't care about until last year, but I freaking hate the Diamondbacks now. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like I don't necessarily want to play the Orioles because I like watching them, and I don't want to hate these players because like some of these, like Gunnar Henderson might be one of my favorite players to watch in baseball. Like he is so freaking good. But yeah, it's like it would be awesome to see. I think the Phillies are in a good spot right now where the summer's coming, bats are going to heat up. So yeah, it should just be. I think it's just gonna be a really fun summer. Really looking like this team is the most fun team to watch probably since the 2011 Phillies. Like from a frustration level, like 2022. Yeah, they made it to the World Series, but there were so many times that season where I was ready to throw my TV out the window. Like, and last year,
100%.
same thing. Like, I know they made it to the LCS, but there were points of the season where I'm like, oh, like why are they like this? And then this year is really the first year, other than that opening series against the Braves, where I have not really been. It's been like a pretty peaceful spring and summer in my household right now.
It is kind of wild, right? And to go back to something you were talking about with the atmosphere in Baltimore has been, a really cool atmosphere to see. And to go back to something we talked about with the series in London, the way that Phillies fans travel is just wild. To see and hear the way that stadium feels like a home game. And something that I didn't realize until I saw it the other day on social media, last night, I think the sellouts in Baltimore, that they've sold out 3 games all season for a team that is playing really well, that is really young, that is really exciting, was one, really surprising. But 2, to see the games that they've sold out, opening day and the last 2, all 3 games against the Phillies. So the game today is sold out for Father's Day. But Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then opening day were the only 4 games that have been sold out in Baltimore, which is like really, really cool to see how, obviously geographically it's really accessible for a lot of, Phillies fans to get down to Baltimore. But like the caption that came with that was like, all right, well, if, DC is CB South, then if, Miami is CB South Beach, what's Baltimore? Like,
yeah.
But it's really cool to see. I think this Philly season has really given a lot of people a glimpse into how well this fan base invests in this team. And I think it has something to do with the fact that a lot of this core group has been around, that you haven't seen a lot of faces change, that you see a lot of that core intact, and that directly connects to the connection with the fan base. It's not nearly as transient. You're not looking for who's the next guy. That same group of guys has been around, and you're seeing some of those homegrown guys come up through the farm system. You're seeing that player development. And I think that definitely has something to do with the fact that, like something you were talking about earlier with the pitching, the starting pitching as of June 13th. Their starting pitching ranks this season first in ERA, first in FIP, first in WAR, first in innings pitched, first in strikeouts, first in opponent's batting average, second in WHIP, and 6th in strikeouts per 9.
It's been great, and how many of our starters have been homegrown guys is really good to see, with the exception of Wheeler and Walker, all Suarez, Sanchez, and Nola, obviously. So yeah, that's been really good to see. And I think, like you said, that definitely resonates, I think, with people. I think after what we saw because even in 2022, like, we weren't having sellouts at Citizens Bank Park as much as we are this year. People are now, I think, resonating with a lot of these players. They saw them in the postseason. They saw their personalities. The guys they're just pretty accessible, right? And I think a lot of people are resonating with this. So the point you made yesterday, I think, with Boston, just Boston and Baltimore, the amount of Phillies fans there has been crazy. It's been really cool, like hearing on TV the "Let's Go Phillies" chants when the Phillies are up, and then the "Let's Go O's." It's kind of like going back and forth between the two fan bases there. That's been pretty fun to watch. But even home games. I mean, I've been to 3 or 4 games this year at this point, and it doesn't matter like what time you go in. It doesn't matter. Like last year, if you got in when the gates opened, you had probably a half hour to get in the store, get to a line to get food. Now, I walked in when the gates opened a couple weeks ago, and like the concourse was mobbed. I'm just like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to be walking around a little bit and trying to avoid some of these lines. even just like going to the bathroom between innings, it's like, okay, I didn't have to wait like 2 years ago. It's like now it's like I really got a time. You got a time when you're going down to get food, bathroom, beer, whatever you're doing. Like you see it just at home too. Like how many more people are coming to these games, and they don't leave their seats during the game time as much. During the postseason, the last 2 seasons, I've been to a lot of games, right? And during the regular season, people would get up. I have end seats, and people would get up and cut through me the entire game pretty much. I'm like, why is no one staying in their seats? During the postseason, I was at games the last 2 postseasons. So not one person gets up. This year, it's way closer to the postseason. People don't want to miss, especially when the Phillies are batting. I notice people don't get up. So that's the time I go down. I'm like, all right, bottom of the order, I'm going to go down to get a hot dog.
Yeah. Well, listen, I can completely attest to that. Right. So the last day, the last Tuesday, we were down. I was down with a group of friends from school. There was about, 70 or 80 of us that went down and basically took over an entire section in the 200 section. And it was great, right. To have, people from school and people from all, bring their families down. And it was really cool to, hang out. But my wife and I are there, and, it's the game where, Cassie hits the walk off at the end of the game. Right. And it's, that game was sleepy all the way until the 8th when Bohm hits the home run to tie it. And, Lace's looking at me going, are we going home yet? Like, what are we doing? And I'm going, sorry. Like I'm already invested. I can't leave.
Yeah.
Like this is, and listen, we're already here. Like what are we really waiting for? We're waiting now to wait in the parking lot to be able to listen to the game or watch it on my phone. So we end up, and then we end up staying, right? And it was an incredible experience, right? Because then it becomes this giant shared experience with all your friends. And you're right. As sleepy as that game was, you can't leave because this team just has this knack of being able to get to be able to just produce in those late moments. And you don't ever want to walk away. Even yesterday. Right. Yes. Yesterday, even when they're down, 6-2, I'm still watching. I'm still tuned in to see all right, can they get a guy on? Can we get an at bat? Can we get, even just that thought process of thinking through, what this team has to be able to get to that point where they're able to, make somebody, even if they're just trying to make somebody sweat, is just really, really what this team is all about. Right. And I think, that makes me think about okay, now what do they do at the trade deadline? Right. Because we've talked a lot about they weren't busy in the offseason. They didn't add a lot of big names. They added a lot of guys on the fringes, which is where, you and I kind of agreed that that's kind of where you build this roster because of the talent level that's already here. Where are you in terms of so the one question I did send you a Twitter poll at one point, June 12th, where you get Marsh and Turner back, and then you've got some decisions to make because you're kind of out of you're out of, options with some guys. So you have the option to be able to send Rojas back to the minors, which, he does have the options. They seem to want to kind of let him grow at this level, which I get. But then you can let Pache hit waivers. You can let Whit Merrifield hit waivers. You can let Dahl hit waivers with the hope that they get, that no one claims them and that you're able to kind of, put them in AAA again. I doubt it. I doubt that those 3 guys, if you release any one of those 3 guys, I guarantee you there's some major league team that's going to find space on their roster for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where it's a good problem to have, right? Where it's okay, we don't have an easy option to just demote here. The easiest thing to do would be, optioning Rojas. He has the options. He's looked okay, but even from a defensive standpoint, he's quick and makes great breaks to balls and everything. But his defensive metrics, and I know this goes into the kind of advanced metrics things and everything, are just okay. I really think that it wouldn't be a bad thing for him to develop a little bit more and just work on hitting a little bit more in AAA. Remember, he never played AAA. He skipped it completely. So it would be an easy thing to do, but go ahead.
Do you read anything into Marsh playing center field yesterday?
I think you got to keep your options open. And the basically have three guys who can do it, right? And I really think they want to hang on to Christian Pache as long as possible. But I think they want to keep Marsh ready there in case they do have to, use him in that spot. Because realistically, but then even against lefties, like I love Brandon Marsh, but against lefties, his numbers are bad. Like they're not good.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I don't think they want him to be an everyday center, everyday player necessarily. But you're kind of in a roster crunch here where it's like, okay, what do you do? Because you're going to be getting guys back. And I don't know if there's an easy answer, right? I mean, you're going to be you're going to be making a tough decision one way or the other, right? Because you're right. The organization sees something with Rojas, obviously, and I trust this front office. I trust the player development now with the new regime here and everything. So they must see something there, and I'm okay with it if they want to let him develop in the majors. But you're going to be losing someone who either like Merrifield, you're going to owe it's not a ton of money, but like $8 million to. And that's kind of like, a waste of space there, I guess. But he has not really produced. I mean, it's been now 3 months, and Thompson has given him, I think, more than enough leeway when it comes to playing time. Because I know sometimes it's tough to come off the bench and everything like that. But he started a few games in a row here and there, and he is just not capitalized. He's been frustrated.
I heard Todd Zalecki talking yesterday about he's on pace for 300 at bats.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not like a small sample size.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, they're making the decisions really tough, right? Witt has been kind of like but David Dahl has come up and been really, really productive for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's gotten a bunch of good hits. He gets the home run in London. He's been in a position to make your decision, much more difficult. And it's a guy that, like, come the postseason, wouldn't mind having a guy like that who's got the Major League Baseball. He's got the experience that he does to be able to be a guy that would come up off the bench and come up in a pinch hit spot to be able to maybe, have that opportunity to be productive. I'm curious to see how this decision ends up playing out, right? Because they send Weston Wilson down.
Right. That was a kind of no-brainer, right? But yeah, I mean, we should find out tonight or tomorrow, I would think, because by the sounds of it, Turner's going to be activated before the game tomorrow. So unless there's a setback.
Yeah, no, I think I'm kind of I'm in that spot. So when you talk about trade deadline, there's a lot of trade deadline conversation. Obviously, the hot name is Luis Robert. A guy that does have some injury history, but is also young and under contract for the next couple of years, but would cost you a significant portion of your farm system. Is that a guy that you make a move because of how tremendously offensive that makes your lineup?
It's like I go back and forth on this so much. I still have not made a decision. Because of what they said and the haul they want back, like they said something like a Juan Soto type haul. I'm like, come on. Like Juan Soto had proven himself by this point. Luis Robert, very good, but you got to have some wiggle room there if you want to deal. I'm like, no one is going to compare him to Juan Soto yet. He has not been healthy enough to do that. He's had one really solid season, but the injuries are there. I hate doing this because we've been burned on it. And I've talked about this before, but like I hate being a prospect hoarder because you never know what they're going to do, right? Mm-hmm. But to me right now, there are two guys that I think are untouchable: Andrew Painter and Aiden Miller. I would hate to see. I don't necessarily want to part with the likes of Crawford or Kaba or any of those guys, but like to make a huge improvement. Okay, yeah, I'd be okay with it, but I'm just afraid of what it would cost. Then can he stay healthy? Does adding another star into the lineup affect the chemistry and everything? So I don't really, I keep going back and forth. Like from a talent level, yeah, like he has so much potential. The White Sox stink. Maybe it's something the Phillies could tap into and make him even better. So there's definitely that potential there. I just get I get nervous on what we have to give up and just how it affects the dynamic of the lineup in the clubhouse. So I don't know. I really don't know.
Listen, this to me feels a lot like when I felt like around the Real Muto trade, right? Like the package that you gave up and the guys, the Sixto Sanchez was supposed to be the next coming of the guy that you were going to, cement into your rotation. And I tend to lean towards like, if you're getting the best player, you win the trade. And when you're trading prospects, you don't know. Mm-hmm. And I think if, and I'm just going to read you a potential lineup, right? If you insert him into the 4-hole of this lineup, right? You're now talking Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Luis Robert, Bohm, JT, Stott, Casti, and Marsh.
It's a really good lineup. You can't argue with.
Like they're you talk about, essentially a lineup that has no break. Like you're going to get, when you put a guy like Stott at the back end of that lineup with, a guy that's going to just kind of battle for you at bats and just, make you burn pitches and, the power, you're getting home run potential from 7 out of the 9 guys. And to see him in a ballpark like this, it does want to make me lean in that direction. But I'm cautious to, what the cost, right? It's a cost benefit analysis. How much is it going to cost you? And then, listen, if he comes here and they just kind of mash their way to a World Series, no one's going to remember, the 5, 7, 9, 12, and 15th prospect that you gave up.
Right.
If they turn out to be the next coming. I'm more hesitant to, the other guy that's been mentioned is a Rosarina. He's another guy that is, kind of on the market, but I'm not super excited about it. I feel like he's kind of like fizzled out a little bit.
He has potential, but coming from a Randy Rosarina fantasy owner right now, he has been extremely frustrating this year. The Rays in general have just been bad, though, which is kind of odd considering they've been pretty good the last couple of years. But yeah, he's struggling to the point where it's like, okay, we're now 3 months into the season. He still has like a sub-6 OPS. I know he's hitting under 200. But I just feel like there is potential there. And, the Rays, though, have a really good they're always a team where I look at and it's like I love scooping players from the Rays. There's a couple organizations that I like doing that. And the Rays are one of them, like Jose Alvarado, like guys like that. But so I think like they could tap into it or find out what's wrong with him. So I don't know. Like he has somewhat of a good track record. He would cost less probably. So I don't know. It's an interesting scenario there. But again, I think where we're at with this team. Obviously, you don't want to stand pat going into the trade deadline. You don't want to say, okay, we're content. You always have to look at what moves you can make. Mm-hmm. But the way the team is right now, it's like, do you give up all this? And then, the biggest thing, obviously, if he matches his way and helps them win a World Series, yeah, Luis Robert, that's the best trade, you could have possibly made. On the other hand, if he plays, into August and then gets hurt again and misses the rest of the season, you're like, oh, crap, I gave up, some really good prospects for an injury here. And I'm just back to the same lineup I already had. Mm-hmm. I know it's a crystal, no one has a crystal ball. No one knows what's going to happen here. But like this team doesn't necessarily need to go out and land a superstar. You know what I mean? They have the firepower right now, barring any more injuries, to do that. But obviously, you always want that peripheral help, and you can't just sit there and say, "Okay, I'm not going to make any moves." If there's something that if an asking price goes down and you can improve the club, then you have to go and pull the trigger and do it. But it's like I'm going into this trade deadline not expecting like a big splash. But, I guess, you never know, and surprises could happen.
What about the A's? The A's is another team. They're another team that, is they could have some arms for sale.
Mason Miller would be awesome, but what they're going to ask for him is like, I hate to say this because I love Mason Miller. Like, he's super fun to watch. But when you throw that hard consistently, and he's coming off an arm injury already from last year, I get nervous giving up, the bank on a guy like that. I am just terrified of an elbow injury with that guy.
Yeah, I think there is some conversation. Like if you're talking about like the ginormous prospect package,
Mm-hmm.
if you packaged him maybe and another bullpen arm,
Mm-hmm.
it might be something that you and could you potentially throw Johan Rojas into a trade like that, knowing the outfield depth that you already have? That maybe it's he's a major league ready prospect that doesn't have to go necessarily with all of guys that are specifically in your farm system. I think that maybe if you can get Mason Miller and another bullpen piece from them, that maybe that makes that process. I think that makes you deeper in your bullpen. And that when you talk about, now having a guy like Mason Miller at the back end of your bullpen with the guys that you already have with, Hoffman and Alvarado and Strom and now you're talking about like being able to go at guys with firepower from the right and the left and just bring arm after arm after arm, especially when you think about the prospect of facing the Dodgers potentially in the world, in a matchup to go to the World Series. If you can't add a bat like Luis Robert, I think stockpiling that bullpen is also a really good plan too.
Yeah, no, I think honestly, if there's a move that's made, I really think it would be something like that. Like, I've seen some other names out there too, like Tanner Scott from Miami, Ryan Helsley from St. Louis. Like, there's some other really interesting names out there that I saw thrown around, who might. And the reason Mason Miller is going to cost as much is because he's so young and under team control for so long, right? Like, you don't have to. You basically have this guy for the foreseeable future. He's not. I don't even think he's arbitration eligible next year. I think he's still pre-arb. So it's like that's the team control aspect of it is huge. Would I love to swing something for him? Like, does that strengthen the back of the bullpen? And I mean, it makes our bullpen. We would have basically 4 lights out guys at the back end of the bullpen. It's like, no one could ever get mad at Rob Thompson for bringing in anyone in a playoff scenario.
No, not at all.
Everyone's good. So yeah, it would be nice. But and again, I don't like being someone who is like, hold on to all your prospects at all costs, especially because this team's window is probably in the next 2 to 3 years after this, this year included. So I don't know. I mean, again, and I trust, but the thing is, I trust this front office. I trust Dave Dombrowski to understand what moves to make. And I think they have a good pulse on the situation, and I wouldn't be surprised with some smaller moves being made. But like I said, I'm having a hard time unless some of the asking prices go down. I don't see a big splash. But again, I mean, it's not going to be angry if it happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you also look. Sometimes you try to pay attention to the stuff that's not going on with the big club, and you look at the way that they're elevating some of these guys into higher profile levels of the farm system. Right, you've seen a bunch of guys get called up. Right, Aiden Miller's now with the Blue Claws. Clausen is now with the Blue Claw. Like you're seeing some of those guys get more opportunities to play. Obviously not at the highest levels, but like you're seeing that that to me is like, all right, are they showcase? Is this a showcase, right? Are they trying to get these guys to be in, more visible positions to, maybe get other teams to look at them to be included in trade packages? It's just, it's interesting to see kind of where those guys are. And, when you talk about the untouchables, right? Aiden Miller has gone and just kind of skyrocketed through this farm system to really kind of showcase the level of talent that he's playing with.
Oh, he has been like, after reading about him and they drafted him, I was so excited to watch him, finally get started here. And this year he has just been so good. And it's interesting. I think we've talked about this before, but it's interesting. As of right now, he's still playing short. So that's interesting to see, because I think when they drafted him, everyone was kind of thinking, oh, he's going to move to third. But that might not happen. But he's comfortable playing short. Everyone says he's playing the position well. And I mean, he is just mashing right now. I know he had a couple hits the other night, or at least so far a couple hits at at high A now with what is it? Jersey Shore now. Used to be
Jersey Shore, yeah. But yeah, he and Justin Crawford are, hit batting at the top of that lineup, and it's kind of cool to see them kind of showcase those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And to it is cool to kind of follow that, now that their journey is more accessible via social media. It is kind of cool to see them be able to but he is just everything that you've seen from where he has gone since he drafted. There's almost been 0 steps back. It's all forward, which is really, really cool to watch.
Yes. And he's not, and what Dombrowski basically said is he wants both those guys that just got promoted to, be challenged more. Right. And it doesn't seem like he's missing a beat so far. So, should be interesting to see how he does there. And if by the end of the season, we see him at AA. So we'll see what happens there.
I'm curious to see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, Eric. The Tony Gwynn stats. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. I came across them this morning, just kind of stumbling around the internet. The first one that I'm going to throw up here, which is just it's just wild to think about it, just to see where and how good he was. So the number of times that Tony Gwynn faced Pedro Martinez, 36. The number of times he struck out, 0. The number of times he faced Greg Maddux, 107. The number of times he struck out, also 0.
Wow.
Just the
dude know how to make contact.
It really is just kind of wild to see how well he played, and to see where he's kind of looked and played and seen, to see what he's doing is just really, really cool.
Yeah.
The next one that I had to find out right here. So the batting average with 2 strikes since 1988. Tony Gwynn with 2 strikes is batting .302. All other combined Major League Baseball players.
Wow.
183.
Crazy.
That's just wildly atrocious.
I mean, but it also speaks to just and he hated striking out. Just reading different quotes from him and everything. Just, his goal was to put the bat on the ball. And honestly, I mean, it's one of those things where now the game has changed, right? And you have guys people striking out. These guys don't care as much anymore, right? Back then, it was like an insult if you struck out. And he took it personally if you struck out. Now these guys are all right, well, I'm going to hit 40 home runs, but I'm still going to strike out 230 times this year. So the mindset has definitely changed. But I liked his mindset and how, make contact, put the ball in play. And that's why he has that average that he has there.
It is just, it's crazy. Just crazy. But the last, I got one more. And go figure. It's there we go. Hold on. We're scrolling here, right? So this one right here. Here we go. This last one. Willie Mays batted .301 lifetime in the big leagues. Tony Gwynn batted .302 with 2 strikes. That to just it sometimes you just got to take a step back. And you're right. I think a lot of this has to do with the way that the game has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And the approach and the strikeouts are obviously significantly up because it's a swing first mentality. But it really does give you a good appreciation for the player that Tony Gwynn was and how prolific a hitter he was.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does.
All right, Eric, anything you got left that we didn't talk about?
I don't think so. I mean, we got big series here. We have San Diego coming into town. We took care of business out there. It'll be good to take care of business at home now. Take advantage of that. So I just want to see him, keep plugging away. Keep, don't let up. Even, even with some of the injuries. Really, really, really excited to get Trey Turner back. I think that just adds a huge spark to your lineup. So it should be a good week. Hopefully a good rest of the month here. And yeah, I mean, I think that we covered all the other bases here.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I wanted to mention that I forgot when we were talking about the London series was something that Bryce Harper mentioned. And I think the prospect of it seems like it would be a good way to expand on something that has already been productive, which was the idea of expanding that London series so that the teams are there a little bit longer, right? You take advantage of the travel, the time consuming part of the travel, right? But you also bring more teams over. The idea that Bryce Harper discussed was bringing, the essentially the prospect of bringing 4 teams over and playing 2 series while you're over there.
Right.
With the idea that like maybe some of those days could be double headers. Maybe some of those days are played in multiple stadiums. But the idea of bringing 4 teams over, making it round robin, so that you can bring those teams over. They spend a week, right? You play 3 days, you give them a day off. You play 3 days, you give them the day off on the back end for the travel. I think the idea of that would be a good way to expand on something that, is something that Major League Baseball is interested in terms of growing the game. When you look at what they're investing in a guy like Chase Utley as the ambassador to be able to bring the awareness of Major League Baseball to Europe and try to grow the game that way. I think the idea of that would be a really, really cool way to kind of expand and give more fan exposure. Because I think the idea of the amount of time that they had to invest in the travel on the front end and the back end, to get there and essentially just play 2 games and then come home it could be expanded a little bit more. When you look at like how the NFL, right, when the Jaguars go over there, they have 2 consecutive weeks where they play.
Right.
So they go over, they play, they spend the whole week, and then they play again, and they rotate through 2 teams. I think something along those lines where you bring more teams, but all at the same time gives the opportunity for them to grow the game a little bit more.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point because I can't imagine going that distance for 4 days. I mean, they got in Thursday and left Sunday night, basically. And from speaking from firsthand experience, I've been to Europe a couple times, and I can't imagine flying there for 4 days and then turning around and coming back. Like, just when you're getting used to your new schedule and everything, you're turning around and readjusting again. So I think it's definitely tough to do that. But yeah, being over there for a week or so, might still affect coming back a little bit, but at the same time, you're probably going to see a better prepared and better like rested team after they've been there for longer than 2 or 3 days.
Most definitely. Well, listen, Eric, enjoy the rest of Father's Day. Good weather, and then we will check back in later in the summer, and we'll see where this team is going into the trade deadline. We'll see how they kind of bounce back with the addition of Trey Turner. But on the way out, go Phils.
Yeah, go Phils. Happy Father's Day. And let's get this awesome pitching matchup today started. I'm ready for that.
Sounds good. Take care.
All right.
Hey, listen to this guy. Tell me how you're feeling here. You're screaming.
I am stoked, baby.
You're screaming like it's still the game going on.
We're talking about the fightings here. The fightings. Said, Mike. Yes.